Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. Good question. It's a lot better than some of this stuff. Who's your favorite drummer? Who's the best drummer in the world? Hello, this is Bobby Jarzombek, and I play with various acts. Fates Warning, Sebastian Bach, Riot, Spastic Ink. My main focus right now is Fates Warning. I'm on tour with Fates. We're here in Europe, in Germany, and that's where I'm at. I studied a lot when I was younger. I definitely had influences, Neil Peart, Terry Bozzio, Simon Phillips, guys like that. Once I learned to read music, I bought a lot of drum books and started learning linear patterns, polyrhythmic patterns, those sort of things, and sort of took that upon my own kind of ideas that kind of came from that. I guess I took it to a little bit of a different place. So pretty much it's my main influences combined with the stuff that I learned from just reading material. And over the years, I just kind of developed that into what I call concepts, like trading 2s and 4s between the hands and the feet, then adding the cymbals, breaking it up between toms. And then, you know, different stuff like the double drop that's on my DVD, Performance and Technique. And I was able to sort of apply those concepts a little bit in some of the music that I've played over the years. I mean, sometimes that kind of stuff doesn't always work out because you're not playing patterns, you know, when you're playing music. But I think the influences that I had, like Neil Peart, who always played really interesting drumming for parts within the music of Rush, that was kind of where I was kind of geared towards. It wasn't so much the exercises, like I never really got off to practicing doubles on my feet and then doubles on my hands or whatever so much. I mean, I did that for practical purposes, but not as exercises that I practiced over and over. So that's my approach, and I practiced a lot when I was younger. I don't get to practice too much anymore, but I did a lot, and so I kind of knew where I was kind of going when I was younger, and kind of led me to where I am now. The Spastic Ink music that I created with my brother Ron was definitely a project that required a lot of time, a lot of patience. Everything is methodically thought out. Every note, you know, I mean, even to like if I want to use this tom rather than this tom in a 16th note run or a 32nd note run, if I wanted, you know, accent a figure with the guitar, or if I want to accent with the bass, you know, on cymbals or whatever, or if I don't want to play one note, or if I want to play 2 notes where there's 1 note. I mean, it's really crazy when, if you really would analyze that kind of stuff, if I would take it from the very beginning of how I approached a certain song, if I was working on a certain song of Spastic Ink. And I apply that to everything, whether it's Spastic Ink, Fates Warning, Riot. It's just, I guess it's a little more, it's a little crazier when it's Spastic Ink because it's so involved. I've tried to think about it in the past of where that comes from. Why are me and my brothers so analytical about these sort of things? And it's going to sound weird, but I think other things that sort of kind of come into play is growing up, we didn't have musical influences from our parents because they weren't musically inclined. The fact that my dad is this is weird. My dad is a farmer and grew up on a farm, a ranch. And when we were growing up, he worked a lot of hours on the yard. 8 hours a day. You know, he's out there planning, he's out there tilling, he's out there doing some sort of yard work. He's really proud of that. And I think that diligent work ethic, I think that sort of thing, we adapted that to music, and we were able to say, you know, he's going to spend 8 hours a day working on this, and I need to spend 8 hours a day working on what I do. And I think that's kind of what we ended up doing right at the beginning. We developed that strong work ethic. And I don't know if you want to succeed as a musician. I mean, it takes that dedication, especially early on, to develop, you know, that sort of work ethic of doing it and being dedicated to whatever you do. The one thing that I think is important in any kind of music is to maintain a certain flow. The music has to sound like it is moving forward. Sometimes I'll hear a pattern that a drummer will play or whatever, and I feel like it might be a cool pattern, but it doesn't really move somewhere. You know, if you have the basic pattern, if you figure out where the basic kick accents are and the snare accents are, where you want them to be first, and then you kind of fill in the holes. It's everybody's own interpretation of how they want to fill in those holes. But I think that that's sort of the thing that is unique about everybody when they sort of create a pattern or whatever. That makes everybody sound a little bit different. But I think the main point is to find those accent points to make the music sound like it moves forward, and then fill in those spaces in between to make the music maybe a little more interesting. I mean, a lot of the stuff today that you hear, to me, it sounds like it could be programmed by a drum machine. I mean, even today, I've been playing drums for 40 years, and I can't tell if it's a drummer or if it's a drum machine, because it almost sounds the same the way things are quantized. And you know, the kick patterns are really interesting, and the snare patterns are, you know, 2 and 4, or maybe a little bit syncopated. But when you start having those dynamics and you're playing, whether it's ghost notes or patterns on the hi-hat ride cymbal with hi-hat lifts and stuff, those things can't really be duplicated correctly with a drum machine even today. And those things make music a lot more interesting, I think. Drumming a lot more interesting, at least. It's weird to think about it now. Some of the choices that I made earlier in my career about cymbals behind me and playing open-handed, I guess I always wanted to be a little different. I wanted to be a little bit more distinguishable than other drummers. The cymbals behind me came years ago on a friend telling me about an audition that a drummer auditioned for a band, and the guy played a roll around the toms, and he didn't have enough time to set up his complete cymbal setup, and he had to reach way behind him to hit the cymbal behind him. And then I was like, wow. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, that would be unique. And so I set up a cymbal behind me and hit it a couple of times in my practice room, and it was pretty easy. And then I tried the left one, and it was a little bit, I had to kind of position it in a different place to make it feel natural for some reason. I don't know why that was, and then I set it up in a different place, and people started noticing that it was kind of a unique thing, I guess, that I was doing at the time. And that started, I guess, it's crazy to think about it, in 1991, I want to say, 1992 maybe, I started doing that. And then the open-handed thing was, I guess it was a Simon Phillips influence. I was playing a lot of different kinds of music, and I was working on crazy drumming patterns with the Riot on the Privilege of Power record. There's one song, Storming the Gates of Hell, and I was trying to play this pattern with just keeping time and between the snare and the toms, and it wasn't working. And I played that one pattern this, playing it open-handed, and I was like, I need to do this. I need to start trying this and applying the whole open-handed thing. And it was weird. I learned at that time, that was, I guess it was I don't even want to say. It was in the early 90s, probably. And I played the pattern, and I learned the whole riot set. Just the hour and a half riot set, playing open-handed. And then I decided, well, you know what, I'm going to practice this way. And so I started practicing every day. And then I got to the point where I was going to gigs, and I took 2 ride cymbals, and I would play open-handed if I felt like I could do it without messing up. And then I would go back to right if I felt like, you know what, I need to do it this way. So I went back and forth for years. I don't know, it took me probably 15 years to switch over completely, because I played for about maybe 15 years before I switched over. So it took a while to completely flip everything over. It's interesting because some of the concepts that I've come up with, I mean, I guess they're a little bit too detailed to explain in a sort of just as a definition, with the exception of, some of the basic hand and foot patterns. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is using inverted rolls. And that is, a lot of drummers play doubles. And if you invert those doubles to, instead of right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, to right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, you can get those sort of accents that you can come off, toms or whatever. And using the open-handed technique, there's sort of weird kind of patterns that you can play where you can accent the downbeat, and it makes more sense doing those inverted doubles rather than doing right, right, left, left, right, right, left, because you have no accent points, And the accent points are kind of where you can come off a cymbal and go right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, right. And so those things, that's sort of a weird thing that I learned from playing different styles of music, actually other styles rather than metal. That's a concept that I think is really cool that hasn't been explored enough in metal drumming. But I use it a lot between the ride and the hi-hat. It's sort of an interesting thing, and between the cymbal and cymbals and toms. I think some of the things that I started doing early, I had a sound in my head, and sometimes I didn't know exactly how to achieve that sound, and maybe I sort of, it's kind of a random thing that I would sometimes do if I was working on something, and my brother Ron on Spastic Ink or something would give me a section of music, and I would try to create something that would complement it or whatever. It's weird. I would just go for like a certain side of the kit. I would, like go for the toms, and I would play something really stupid just to make it like, this is what I want it to sound like, And I would be like, well, that's very bad, It wouldn't sound very good, but that's kind of where I was going, and I would just start, like, well, that's not it. But I would start to say, that's what I want it to sound like. And then I would figure out, well, that's a pattern. I can create a pattern that kind of works with that. So those things came from sort of a sound of what I wanted the particular part to sound like. I wanted it to be heavy, And sometimes if you don't have the facility, you don't have the techniques to do certain things, you can still be effective with playing certain things and getting the point across, but having, the extra sort of techniques or whatever you want to call it, those things just give you a little more options to be a little more creative with it, or a little more particular with whatever you're working on. I know that sounds vague, but really it's about, you know, expressing yourself as far as like, if you want to have something sounding really heavy, or you want something light with the, you know, with the cymbals or whatever, you don't have to be a great drummer to get those points across. You know, you just have to be a creative, you know. I sort of have a way of thinking that I always have had since I was young and started playing, as far as my setup and my approach. And I guess I'm pretty comfortable with, you know, 3 rack toms and a floor tom. If the music calls for it, I'll add splash cymbals. But I'm sort of comfortable with those things, and I always feel good having those things in certain places. If I were to change my setup or move things around, like doing like Mike Mangini, where the toms are sort of like this, you know, I think that would be, I would have to start a whole new learning process, and I'm too old for that. No, seriously. And when I'm not drumming, I spend my time doing other things. I don't get a chance too much to practice anymore, which, you know, is something that I made sure that I did early on. And every time I sit behind the kit these days, it's to learn music for a particular recording, or to practice for a live performance, or that sort of thing. You know, that's kind of when I sit behind the kit. Other than that, I'm in my garden, and I'm, you know, working on my fruit trees, you know, the pecan trees, watering, growing, you know, new things. And that's kind of weird, but that's kind of my focus these days. I've really taken back to where my dad sort of came from, and the sort of taking a little more pride in some of the things of my early years that I grew up with, that I saw him doing. So drumming is great for me, and I've always thought that I've had a great career playing drums, and playing with various artists like Rob Halford, which, if somebody told me when I was growing up that I would ever play drums with Rob Halford, I would have said, "You're crazy." And I was fortunate to do that for many years, and some great recordings. Fate's Warning, a band I grew up listening to. Sebastian Bach, another artist, where he was a little bit in a different genre than what I was doing. And then doing the Spastic Ink stuff with my brother, which, you know, we grew up playing together as kids, and then we sort of separated for many years. So I feel pretty content with where I am as a drummer, and moving forward and doing different things with my life in addition to drumming, and that's spending time on my house, my garden with my wife, and that sort of thing. I really enjoyed my time here talking on Drum Talk. It was very cool, very good questions. It made me think a little bit. If you guys out there listening, hope to see you sometime soon on the road, out with Fate's Warning, touring in Europe and touring in the States soon, next year, doing some more stuff. So should be really cool, and I hope to see you soon.